Watch the birdie.
Watch the birdie. Quick. All together after 3. Cheese!
It helps if you possess a reliable record of what the town and the townspeople actually looked like about 100 years ago. And in this respect, Baileyborough is exceptionally well provided for. The William Coleman that John had referred to was the son of James Coleman, and between them they've left a photographic chronicle of the changing face of Baileyborough throughout the 20th century. James Coleman was a pioneering photographer, certainly, but he also possessed what you might describe as an artistic wit, which he applied to some of his photographs, as you'll see. The grounds of the much photographed Church of Ireland at one end of Main Street seemed a fitting place for me to meet James Coleman's grandson Garnet, who very kindly offered to show me some of his grandfather's more famous...
We see Baileyborough has gone a little bit backwards. It doesn't have the trams any longer.
Right, this I'm not going to be caught by this because I know the story too well. Your grandfather, this was?
My grandfather was, as he said in his ad, he was a photographic artist.
Yes.
And in 1902 he was in Douglas in the Isle of Man, and he saw they had horse-drawn trams.
Yes.
And he thought, what's good enough for Douglas
is good enough for Baileyborough.
So he came back, and he invested a lot of his hard-earned money, and he put in a tram company in Baileyborough.
So he became a very rich man and owned a transport business.
That's where I got all my...
As well as a photographer. Right. No. So he was a liar, in other words. Is that basically it?
He superimposed the trams on top of a photograph.
I see.
And as I looked at this, and it only hit me last week when I was looking to do my homework, they're driving on the wrong side of the road. So he's a continental as well. He thought about that we'd all be driving on the left-hand side.
But they're not just superimposed willy-nilly. They're superimposed according to the proper perspective and proportion and everything else.
You could believe it that it might have been trams back in those days.
To me, that looks entirely convincing. If you hadn't told me that was basically a photographic lie, then, I would not have.
He did upgrade them.
Right.
And he put in electric trams. Now that one, I think the perspective isn't as good. It is less believable.
It should be going away from us rather than be tilted towards it like that at the back. A slightly less effective, that one.
And then he moved them on a bit. He has a car in this one, and they're smaller. He's obviously dealt with the perspective by putting them further back in the image.
So when he did this, he did this for some kind of a joke, obviously. But did he mass produce these?
Yes, they were sold in the shop, and right up when I was a child, which isn't that long ago, in the 70s and 80s.
Gallantly put, yes.
They were still selling them in the shop.
Yes.
And people used to come in and ask for the tram postcards.
And some people actually buy them thinking they were buying a genuine photograph of a genuine scene?
They probably did. But it's
right. So he was a bit of a joker. Is that the only kind of trickery that he used?
That's the tram ones, there's 4 different ones here. They're the only ones that we're aware of. Right. But he had a good sense of humour.
That seems to be the case, all right, okay. Passed on down the generations.
No, I lost mine, I'm told.
I don't think so somehow. So your grandfather started it off in the early 1900s, is that the case?
1904 the studio opened.
Right.
As he says here, it was probably one of the largest studios in Ireland.
So what are we looking at here? Is this part of...
That's the studio.
That's the studio itself?
At the back of the house.
Right.
And there was a background which was painted, and then you took your photos against that, and then there were some props. That table, actually, my sister still has it.
This table here?
Yeah. There's this camera that we have here.
That's a camera?
That is a camera, believe it or not.
That's the camera?
Yeah. Right, he would have gone in underneath it like this, and he'd have pulled a big cloak over his back so he could see. Right. The image came upside down, and then he would set it up and take the photo.
And that seemed like an excellent cue for an actual demonstration, as Garnet's family were on hand nearby, willing to stand in for yet another joke photograph, that playful Coleman spirit still very much on display. The Coleman collection, and a lot of other photographs besides, have since been published in a beautiful book by local man Leslie McCaig, and I think that some of the pictures on this table may yet trigger off a story or two when we return to Baileyborough.